Hi, Luca. Thank you so much for joining us today. You guys, Luca is the Global Head of Innovation for Swiss Re, one of our global partners. It's been an honor working with Luca and the team for quite a while. Actually, we know Luca from before he joined Swiss Re, when he joined Zurich. And I remember the first advisory meeting we had at the day that we launched insurance. Luca was at that advisory meeting, just under a different company. Today, we thought it would be good to have a discussion about where Swiss Re is in terms of their global transformation. And I was chatting with Luca, I think not that long ago, and he brought up some of the points, some of the areas that they thought could be interesting. And they were open to sharing it with the audience. And we thought this could be a very, very good educational thing for everyone to hear, and that's why we wanted to invite Luca, to have a fireside chat.
Okay. Thank you, Ali. Actually, this is the very first time we talk about this in public. But Ali has been seeing from time to time the one or the other slide, and then he said, can you talk about this at Plug and Play? And so that's how it came about. But I think it's also about time that we start talking about it. And let me just see.
Oh. Wait, I think this is the wrong presentation, guys.
It's always the same. In technology shops, the technology never works. But anyway.
So maybe we should start with just giving a little bit of background of, I know you guys have been doing a lot of stuff, even though you've been quiet and haven't shared a lot.
We've been very quiet by choice, and we're doing some of the stuff. I'm going to show when the slides arrive, I'm going to show that. But the reality is that we felt embarrassed. We were doing a lot of stuff. There was a lot of techurism. People were going around. At a point, then I came in, they asked me to pull things together and make a strategy out of it. And we had collected over 300 tech initiatives that were going on across the company, and the impact was zero. It was and we felt, we cannot go to the public and talk about this. This is something we need better sort out before. And then we embark into a journey, and it took really long until we understood something very simple, which is what we call the tech transformation, at least in our industry, comes in 3 phases. There's a first phase, we call it exploration, that when people go to disruption conferences, they get back very excited, and guess what? Nothing happens. We call it watch it, don't touch it kind of phase, okay? So then there's a second phase, and that's where I see at the moment is most of the industries, is where people experiment, the experimentation phase. So they open accelerators, they have innovation teams and the like. But again, at least in our case, the impact of that phase was almost zero, let me put it that way. So we call it the touch, don't use it phase. And I was saying, but we need to move into value creation. The value creation is use it, make some money. That should be the objective in very simple terms. And then we went one step further, and we figured out that the reason or the way to make things work is when instead of departing from the technology, which is what most people do, you depart from the business. So we challenged the businesses to put forward use cases. And as it turned out, it was extremely difficult. And when you read a good use case, it reads kind of easy and pedestrian, but to write it is really difficult. But anyway, the businesses eventually came up with the use cases. And in that process, we realized that the reason why technology is so difficult for insurance is that it touches insurance alongside 2 dimensions. There's a first dimension, which is the dimension of productivity. We still live in a stone age. There's a lot of talking about insurance being, the world being underinsured. And guess what? Because it's far too expensive. I think insurance is probably twice as expensive as it should be.
That's what I said too, just FYI.
And there's a lot that can be done there. But it's not trivial because of legacy systems, because of legacy distribution, a lot of legacy there, and because of regulation. And let's be honest to ourselves, parts of the industry are trying to play the regulation cards to keep things as they are. And then there's another dimension, which is technology is changing, in many cases, the nature and size of risk pools. So, think of cars is the easiest to think of. With semi or even fully autonomous vehicles, the liability moves from the driver to the OEM. That changes a lot. And this risk pool is structurally shrinking. Yeah, it's getting bigger and bigger because there are more and more cars. But in reality, there are less and less accidents. So that is shrinking, if you want. And then there's another one, take cyber. 5 years ago, nobody was talking about cyber risk. And now we all realize it's probably going to be the mother of our risk pools in 5 to 10 years from now, and nobody really knows how to insure it on a large scale. So this is creating a lot of ambiguity, a lot of, people feel insecure about how the industry should react against that. So those were the things that we discovered.
Yeah, and before we start in something like just on a side note, this is off of the question. Luca, could you go back? Because one thing that Luca does is that he picks the best pictures for his presentations, and they always have like a sub-context. Could you tell us more about why you chose this picture? Every time I ask him, I'm always amazed by the answer.
Okay, now everybody knows I'm a fan of Greek mythology. This is the picture of the bird of Athena that is known to have been born out of the head of Zeus. And the story goes like this: Zeus had a terrible headache, and then he's desperate, and so he goes to Hephaestus, who was the god of technology at the time, asking for help. And he manufactures a special axe and bumps the axe on his head, and then out comes Athena, which is intelligence. so that's I thought it was how to get the intelligence box using technology.
Using a hammer. All right, got it. So there's another thing that you said. I just want to make sure that everyone got it. If we go to the next slide, there's one that I like a lot, which is this one. So watch it, don't touch it, don't use it, and touch it and make some money. So one thing that we just like to just say here is that I think our experience has been kind of the same, that when partners join us, the first year of the partnership usually is a lot more about just understanding what's going on in Silicon Valley, what startups are doing, and just getting a feel of what's going on. And I think a big KPI for us has been, if by the end of the year or in 9 months, the partner starts asking the right questions, that's a major improvement. Because a lot of people who start coming here, I mean, it always starts, and it's very normal. I mean, everyone does that. It's like, hey, I want to see AI. Okay, what kind of AI? Just AI, and in general. And it's very hard for us to understand how is that going to help you without having an idea of how AI is going to be used. But then after a while, it starts moving more towards, hey, I want to see what are the AI applications for underwriting for this specific product that I have in this specific market. And that's where a lot of this kind of stuff comes. And then experimentation is about, it's okay to fail. It's okay for you to have 10 POCs and pilots and fail every single one of them to build the muscle memories to be able to later create value. And I guess Swiss Re now is in a value generation phase, right?
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, okay, so tell us more about that. So tell us more about how does the value creation work?
Well, so what basically we did was we understood this logic of how tech is changing insurance. And when we understood that we need to go alongside use cases coming from the business, and then we have basically structured activities around 4 boxes. And those boxes are not perfect, but they're practically useful. That's why we choose them. The first one, we're a reinsurance company, so it's about helping our clients becoming better and better. So then the same we should do for ourselves, which is basically increasing productivity. The third one is getting closer to risk. Why? Because we see how in many cases the nature of risk access is changing. Again, car is a very good example. In 5 years from now, probably most cars will come with insurance built in. So this is a totally different distribution system than the one we have today. So, and maybe there's a share for, what is going to be our role in such a setup? And finally, we have over 150 years worth of global data. We need to make sense of those data, use them, and it's not trivial. And we said, we need to have a special area of focus around data, and so we've structured our activities around those 4 boxes.
And then I guess, it sounds like you guys have a lot of plans, but I think the devil is in the details. So how do you guys plan to do that?
Those were the details in the past. So when we started with this exercise,
sounds very clean structure.
This was the decision-making process. So as many committees as you possibly think. But if you think that we're a reinsurance company, it makes sense. Because when you're about to sign a large reinsurance contract, you're betting the company. So a small mistake and you go bust. So that can happen. So how do you avoid this? Is by having as many people as you can looking over it, spotting a mistake. Now, apply the same thing when you screen a startup. The startup is get killed within milliseconds. So we said we need to change that and simplify. So, and then I had a conversation with Christian. Christian is our CEO. And he said, oh, well, how do we do that organizationally? And I said, it's very simple, you do it. And I possibly cannot have the time to do this. No, you don't need to do anything. You just need to say it. And then we create a small team. And then this team is basically has the task to facilitate the process. This is a change management program as much as it is a tech program. Nobody in the team is allowed to innovate anything, so I'm not the head of innovation. We've closed down the innovation team. Innovation is the job of the business. What the team does is it helps establishing the right contacts to the right companies, and it helps the businesses to prepare use cases. But then it's for the businesses to do the stuff. And actually, as far as I'm concerned, my most important KPI is to make myself redundant as soon as possible.
And you have a very interesting saying. When I ask how many people are working on innovation in Swiss Re, how many?
14,500. Everybody.
And that's one of the things that I think is very interesting. And sorry, go back 1 second about how do you, because one of the interesting areas is that you have a very lean team, but at the same time you really try to get a lot of the business units to be directly engaged. Yeah. Any quick hint or any feedback on what's useful for people to know? Because that's a question we keep getting asked a lot, is where does the innovation team work versus in conjunction with the business units? Is it you guys source past it to them, or is it more you guys do a POC past it to them? Or how does that work?
No, the business comes with a problem, okay? Let me take a recent example. So they come with a problem and say, we would like to do automation of knowledge work. However, we get stuck because we're not able to extract content from tables that come in images. So that's a use case, okay? As it turns out, this problem is shared across all business units. So, and then we pack the people and bring them to the tech cluster to search for a company able to do that. And there are not that many companies able to do that. Actually, we've only found one that does it really electronically, because many companies are, yeah, of course I can do content extraction. And then you go, and then you lift the hood, and what you see inside is a real depth of mechanical Turks, meaning humans somewhere in the world actually doing the work. That's what was not what we were looking for. So, and when you do those processes, then you end up involving, in many cases, over 100 people. And they all work to solve the specific use case and sub-use cases to get traction in a marketplace.
Very interesting. And I guess a lot of what you guys do is basically finding the problems, scouting for the relevant technologies, and choosing partners. So how does the scouting process work? What are the different initiatives you guys have in place for vetting technologies?
First of all, we basically identified for ourselves a set of do and don'ts, meaning, we need to enable the workforce to do the stuff. I'm going to talk about it maybe a bit later. Then focus on top-notch access partners. We are an underwriting company. We're not an engineering company. Yes, we have maybe 20 top engineers, but we don't pretend to be the one who understands the nuts and bolts of a technology we touch. However, we work with partners such as Plug and Play, the VCs in Palo Alto, MIT, academia, and we look at what those people believe in. And as it turns out, those people are making billions by choosing the right technology. So they check the technology, and so far, what we found out is that through this process, we get to technology that actually is robust and works. So that leads to tech platforms based on best breed engineering. So what we don't do is we don't invest anymore. We found out actually it doesn't help to invest because then you become a competitor to the VCs. They don't like that. At least they told us. We don't believe in exclusivity. Why? Because the innovation is in the execution, in our case, not in the algorithm. Other people make money innovating on algorithm. We make money innovating on how we execute. Physical presence, we don't need. Actually, I'm present whenever I need to be present anywhere, and so do people from my team. So I spend my life in a plane. But apart from that, we found if we have people in a place, they've got a lot to do for a week, and then they've got nothing to do for the following 3 months. So we don't need that. We rather invest in airline tickets. And ivory tower innovation teams, they don't work. I mean, we couldn't make it work. Maybe others are better at doing this. And therefore we said, it's the business that needs to do that. Now, where do we do it? We said, well, we cannot do that everywhere, and we will miss out probably 20-30% of the equation by doing it this way. But we get the 70% that I'm pretty proud of. And we figure, as it turns out, is basically Palo Alto with this set of partners, mostly VCs and plug and play. It's Cambridge, Massachusetts, where MIT and the ecosystem is Israel, where we work with SOSA, which gives us access to far more than we can possibly digest. NASCOM in India, which is an interesting animal because NASCOM is kind of a state-owned plug-and-play that the Indian government is using to re-import seasoned, very good Indian engineers. And then China, which is the big surprise for me. I mean, what's happening in China is staggering. And the only way to be in China is to work with Chinese companies. And there we engage with, again, plug and play, we open together. But then Tsinghua University, to make sense of it, imagine Stanford and MIT combined times 4. So, and they also have their own VC, it's called Tsinghua Asset Management. They have a portfolio of 10,000 companies. And it's backed by a fund of 60 billions. They invest worldwide. This is kind of the SoftBank equivalent, if you want. So, and then we basically, the moment we have the use cases, meaning the business problem and the use case, we post our use cases to the clusters, and we say, look, do we have solutions? They go through the portfolios, they come back saying, okay, we think you should meet company XYZ. So there's a lot of due diligence we can do without traveling. And then when we have enough substance, we select a team and we bring the business decision makers along to interact with those companies. Out of 20 that we see, we may do a proof of concept with, 3 or 4. And then hopefully we go into implementation. And we have the first cases now where we're actually implementing this stuff. But, we need also to be realistic. There are only that many use cases that you can implement at any point in time, even for a large corporation like us.
So you guys basically start working with external partners after mobilization of tech clusters, or before that? I missed that part.
No. We always start from a business problem.
Okay. Business unit, get the understanding,
exactly.
create
then
a case.
We say use case. The moment we have use cases,
you work with partners.
We start working with partners. Now, obviously, as we travel and we see stuff, we also get some inspiration. But I would say, we see for most order is kind of 80% inspiration, 20% perspiration, and we say, no, we need to turn it around. It's 80% perspiration, 20% inspiration.
Very interesting. And then you move to speed dating, POC. Yeah. How long does your POCs usually take? Like, is it like
It depends on the technology, because in some cases it may be a week, and in other cases it may be a year. It really depends on the complexity.
1 year for a POC. It's interesting.
Well, but it's like, now that we're implementing, because part of the POC can also be the mobilization effort in a company. So we have now a data platform, and to onboard everybody, and with everybody, I really mean 14,500, it takes time. You need to train them, you need to explain it, you need to evangelize, and so on and so forth. And we are a Swiss company, and Swiss companies do a lot of stuff in consensus modus, which is kind of cumbersome and slow. However, the moment you have it, you really have it.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think a large part of what you are focused as well is internal transformation as well, and using boot camps and some of the other services.
Yeah, the one challenge, and maybe I briefly on how do we enable the 14,500 to do this? Okay, and I only focus on two. I've commented on the first one is we have the CEO sponsorship. And again, going back to that conversation I was quoting some 18 months ago, Christian told me, how can I possibly do this? I say, you just need to make a statement. So, and reality is that that statement made clear inside that this is a priority, and outside that we're serious about it. So that's all he needed to do, really. He's doing also other stuff because he's a passionate, but those are the strategic levers. So, and then the other thing was, how do we enable people to do it? Because it's not that difficult, actually, but people need to learn how to do it. So the first thing we did was we went to a consultancy company, and they were organizing seminars and frontal presentations. And people were coming back, were very expensive.
$2 million each.
Yeah, and people were coming back, and they were asking for more money to buy consultancy studies. So that's not the way it was intended to be. And so we ended up designing it ourselves, and we did a pilot. We called it Bootcamp, which is basically taking 35, 40 people in one location, working day and night, going through the tech sourcing process in 4.5 days. So from learning how to develop a use case to selecting the right company for it, do a proof of concept on the flight, and then do a business plan back on the envelope, which were all anathema to us kind of concept. So as it turns out, people, even the most great actuaries get extremely excited. Meanwhile, people are asking to do more and more. We've taken some almost 500 people through this process, but nobody was forced. Okay, so now people are asking to repeat it. And now people are starting to talk to clients, and some clients are starting to say, we would also like to do one of those, and we haven't figured out yet how those things could be done with clients. But that's basically the mobilization program. And it's a simulation where people have to do the stuff. Now they've discovered that actually in those 4.5 days, they can even develop kind of robust prototypes. So they're using it as a tool to turbocharge problem solutions in their units.
And do you see these boot camps, just to go back really quick, do you see these boot camps as a better way? Is it more about creating excitement and a culture and educating people, or do you see it more as a way to actually create value and find solutions to problems?
It started as a training, a piece of training, also with some excitement. But what we've learned, and we didn't expect that, what we can use them to create solutions. So now, when you do a boot camps with, let's say, 5 teams, 5 people, you try to create 5 solutions. As it turns out, maybe 2 are useful, okay? But you have the learning, and you have some results that are tangible. So that's the way we do it. And we did some with...
Yeah, like we did one with you guys. We just call it executive workshops, but it's based off of the bootcamp idea. We did a few in New York, I think, with you guys, and we're doing more. I think it's a very, very interesting way to both train people on understanding the language, better understanding what it is, but at the same time, by them being exposed to ideas that could be common across the industry, to get them very excited and potentially move into solutions.
There's no better way to learn something than to do it. As simple as that.
And you guys had a lot of commitments. I think the last one that we were aware of, you guys had 50 to 100 people, and it was 5 or 10 major business units.
Yeah, but that was actually 2 boot camps in parallel. So we've learned those things are actually pretty difficult to run. But meanwhile, we also use the boot camps to train the trainers. And meanwhile, we have some 30, 35 people within Swiss Re that can act as a moderator. And so it's a fully internal solution that we have.
Yeah, this is something that we've also found a lot of value out of it. I think it's a quick way to get a POC or a pilot off the ground. And if anyone has any questions, happy to chat more about it later, especially something that we think is a lot easier to do in satellite offices because they're a lot closer to the business units. And then last but not least, I think one of the most exciting part of the presentation is what does Swiss Re think is going to make the biggest impact, and especially Luca think, in terms of on global risk?
I'm coming slowly but surely to the conclusion that all fundamental pieces of technology are there. They're working. So what really will make the difference will be the combination. So what we see are emerging bundles of different technologies that make a difference specifically for our industry. So, and it would take too long now to go through each of those. We're over time, but I think the message is the bundles make the difference. So it's when you combine sensors with data analytics, with catastrophe recovery. So that gives you a use case you can actually work on.
Yeah, and that's something I would like to add quickly, that we think some of these technologies could have a much bigger impact on an insurance company than some of the other distribution or underwriting technologies that are out there.
And maybe the last comment would be, where we're heading to is by involving the entire workforce, wave by wave, into what we're doing. What we really want is to adopt technology as a way of life. Technology needs to become normal. Nothing special about it, no noise, just use it, it's useful. Make sure you use it when it's useful as opposed to when it's just sexy. So my vision really is in a year from now to be quite there so that I can move on and do other things.
That sounds like a great life. All right, that's it on our side. Thank you so much for joining us, and looking forward to the presentation today.